everybody. It is the 23rd of April. My name is Miss Higby and I am here today to read you the next chapter in The Royal Rabbits of London, The Hunt for the Golden Carrot. So, as we just found out, Shiloh was on the back of a motorbike with STBT and they were heading into the countryside. However, when they got there, they ended up being chased by a pack of dogs and Farmer Ploughman's wife. They managed to find their way into a pub that was full of foxes, not great for Shiloh. They met a fox called Riot, and that is where the story left off. So let's dive straight in to chapter 4. I hope that you're sitting comfortably. As much as Shiloh trusted STBT's ability to keep the other foxes under control, he wasn't going to take any chances. One snap of a jaw or a swipe of a paw and it would all be over before STBT could say, "Didn't I just tell you he's with me?" So Shiloh followed STBT to a table and made sure he sat right beside him. After all, they were probably going to be here for some time, until the danger of Farmer Ploughman's wife and the dogs had passed. Riot handed him a glass of juice. It was purpley pink in colour. He didn't want to be rude and smell it. His mother had brought him up to be a well-mannered bunny. So he took a small sip. He'd never tasted anything like it before. It wasn't unpleasant, but it had a rather sour aftertaste. Shiloh frowned. He was surprised. He didn't recognise the vegetable. Shiloh had tasted every vegetable, even Brussels sprouts, which most young rabbits found disgusting. "What is it?" he asked. "The specialty of the house," Riot replied proudly. "Ferret blood with bat spit." Shiloh went green, then pink, and finally turned grey. His stomach gave a groan and he thought he was going to be sick. STBT laughed and patted him on the head. Country foxes are a little unsophisticated," he whispered. "Here, try this." He passed Shiloh his butterscotch on the rocks. Shiloh took a gulp and the effect was instant. It was sweet and rich and creamy, and his stomach stopped churning. He shivered, relieved not to have vomited in front of all the foxes. One ear flopped over his eye patch as he sank back into his chair. He still felt a little sick. Really, he just wanted to get home to his mother. This place made him feel less like a royal rabbit and more like a weak and feeble bumpkin he'd been in his previous life. He remembered what Horatio had told him when he'd set off into the unknown for that first time, all those months ago, that life was an adventure, and that anything was possible, by will and by luck, with a moist carrot, a wet nose, and a slice of mad courage. And Shiloh felt a little of his confidence return. STBT spent time talking to the other foxes. He wasn't in any rush. He was enjoying his drink and was interested to hear how things were in the countryside. Life was considerably better since fox hunting had been outlawed, but farmers still laid traps, shot at foxes with their guns and got angry when they killed their hens and stole their eggs. STBT reasoned that there were so many hens. What was one or two less? Shiloh sat patiently and listened, but he wished STBT would finish his drink so he could go home. Soon he began to twitch and squirm, fidget and jiggle. At last, STBT drained his drink and stood up. "It's been interesting to talk to you all," he said, climbing onto his Harley-Davidson and winking at Riot, who fluttered her eyelashes at him and smiled. "But it's time I got back to number 10. It's not wise to leave the Prime Minister alone for too long." Shiloh jumped on behind him and was relieved when the big door opened to allow them to leave. He felt even better out in the fresh country air and drew big gulps into his lungs, dispelling the smell of fox. As they motored round to the front of the pub, he saw Mrs. Ploughman's quad bike parked outside. He couldn't help but smile at the thought of the very angry farmer's wife having a drink in there, while he and STBT had been right below her, having one too. It wasn't long before Shiloh began to pick up the scent of home. He recognised the big green leafy forest where he had grown up. His heart gave a jump and his ears stood to attention, and he suddenly felt full of energy and excitement. STBT stopped the motorbike. "I think it's best I leave you here, Shiloh," he grinned, baring his teeth that were long and sharp like daggers. "I'm not sure you'd be able to explain how you came to be riding on a Harley-Davidson with a fox to the rest of your warren. Some things are best kept secret." Shiloh hopped to the ground. It was good to feel the earth beneath his paws. "Thank you, STBT," he murmured. "You take care, little rabbit," he said, most foxifluously. "And remember, any trouble with the local foxes, and you just say you're a friend of mine. Understood?" "Understood," Shiloh replied. The motorbike let out a loud bang, then disappeared up the lane, leaving Shiloh alone but happy. He was finally going to see his family. With his heart as warm and fluffy as a freshly baked bun, he hurried towards his home. He kept vigilant, for the countryside was full of danger. Birds of prey circled in the sky, and foxes prowled in the long grasses. And even though STBT had told him to mention his name, Shiloh was wise enough to know that he'd have little time for that if he was about to be eaten. At last he reached the warren where his community of rabbits lived in a cluster of burrows at the edge of the forest. It was mid-morning and all was quiet. He wondered where everyone was. Even though rabbits would be in the fields, gathering food or in their homes underground, there was always someone about. Today, however, there was no one. The sight of the burrow caused a lump to form in Shiloh's throat. How often had he sat beneath the weeping willow in Green Park and dreamed of this very spot. Although he had never really fitted in and his siblings had teased him and made him feel small, this was home. It was where he had grown up before he'd found a place among the royal rabbits and started a new life of adventure. He couldn't wait to surprise his mother. He hopped into the mouth of the tunnel and scampered down into the soft dampness that was so familiar to him. It smelled of sweet earth and rabbit, as it always had. He reached the kitchen, expecting to see his mother at the stove, cooking lunch, but it was empty. He could tell that his family had been here that morning, because their breakfast bowls were still on the table, 7 places laid, 1 for Mother, 3 down each side for his 3 brothers and 3 sisters. Except now, he looked, there were 8 places laid. There was another bowl at the end, which hadn't been touched. Who was that for? His excitement faded. Who was this mysterious rabbit that had taken his place? He was probably big and strong and athletic like Maximilian. Or perhaps it was a doe who was fleet of foot and elegant like Elvira. Maybe his mother had grown to love this rabbit more than him. After all, Shiloh was the runt of the litter, the weakest and feeblest of her kittens. She couldn't know how much being a raw rabbit had changed him. Perhaps he'd been foolish to come home. He hadn't fitted in before, so why did he think he would now? He should return to the Grand Burrow where he belonged and where he was loved. With a heavy heart, Shiloh left. He would wait at Horatio's burrow until Farmer Ploughman's van went to London again the following week. No one would know he'd even ever been there. Dragging his paws, he began to shuffle through the forest. Just as he was about to leave the warren, he heard a voice he recognised. His breath caught in his throat. His ears pricked, and he turned round in surprise. "Mother?" "Shiloh!" she murmured, staring at him with eyes as round as moons. "Is that really you?" "It really is me," he replied, and the sight of her standing there looking uncertain made his heart leap and all his doubt evaporate like mist in the sunshine. She opened her arms and Shiloh fell into them, smelling everything he loved about home. "Oh, I've missed you," she sighed, closing her eyes and pressing her face against his. "I've missed you so much." Shiloh wasn't going to mention the 8th place at the table. He didn't want to spoil the moment. But then he couldn't help himself. He had to know. Mother, who's the new rabbit who's come to stay? What new rabbit? She asked. The one you've laid a place for at the end of the table. Mrs. Tawnytail cupped Shiloh's face in her paws and gazed at him with tenderness. That, my darling, is for you. For me? He gasped. For you, she sighed, and her eyes shone with tears. Every day I hoped you'd come home, so I laid a place for you, just in case. Shiloh danced for joy round his mother. Everything's just as I imagined it would be, he sang happily. It's perfect. And there's a picture of Shiloh and his mother. But his mother's smile didn't reach her eyes, and Shiloh stopped dancing, sensing her worry. Isn't it? He asked, feeling his ears droop. I'm afraid not, she said. The elders called a meeting in the hollow. It's just finished. Something strange is going on in the forest. Perhaps it's nothing, but... She hesitated. Walk with me, Shiloh. I think you should see for yourself. And that is the end of chapter 4. So I wonder what it is that's been going on in the forest. I wonder if it's got anything to do with the golden carrot. Come back tomorrow to find out. Thank you everybody for watching this video, and keep leaving your comments, and please keep sharing. It really does mean a lot, so thank you so much to everybody for that. I hope you are all okay and keeping safe and enjoying the lovely weather that we've been having as well. See you all soon. Bye.